She was supposed to be the voice of a generation, the gothic princess who gave millions of outcasts a reason to believe. But behind Amy Lee's haunting vocals and ethereal presence was a woman trapped in an industry designed to destroy her. Record executives tried to silence her, band members betrayed her trust, and Hollywood predators saw her as just another target. What you're about to discover will change everything you thought you knew about the woman behind Bring Me to Life. The story begins in 2000, when Amy Lee was just another struggling musician in Little Rock, Arkansas. She'd been writing songs since she was a teenager, pouring her pain into melodies that would later captivate the world. But the inspiration for Evanescence's breakthrough album came from the darkest period of her life, a 3-year relationship that nearly broke her spirit completely. Amy has been open about the abusive relationship that shaped much of the Fallen album, though she's never named the person involved. For 3 years, she endured emotional manipulation and control from someone she trusted. The relationship left her feeling hollow, disconnected from herself, and questioning her own worth. Songs like Going Under and Bring Me to Life weren't just artistic expressions. They were desperate cries for help from a woman who felt like she was drowning. The most chilling part wasn't the abuse itself, but how it nearly convinced Amy to give up music entirely. Her abusers systematically undermined her confidence, telling her that her songs were worthless and that she'd never amount to anything as an artist. For someone whose entire identity was built around music, these attacks cut deeper than any physical violence could have. Amy later revealed that she came dangerously close to believing these lies, almost walking away from the very thing that would eventually save her. What makes this even more tragic is that Amy's mother noticed the change in her daughter's songwriting during this period. The lyrics became darker, more desperate, filled with references to suffocation and escape. When her mother expressed concern and suggested therapy or medication, Amy refused. She believed that taking antidepressants would dull her creativity and rob her of the emotional intensity that fueled her art. This decision to preserve her pain for the sake of her music would define her entire career. The relationship finally ended when Amy met someone at a restaurant who looked her in the eye and asked a simple question: "Are you happy?" That moment of clarity from a complete stranger inspired Bring Me to Life and gave Amy the strength to break free. But escaping the relationship was just the beginning of her battles with men who wanted to control her. When Evanescence finally got their record deal with Wind Up Records, Amy thought her struggles were over. She was wrong. The label executives took one look at their gothic metal sound and decided it wasn't commercial enough. Their solution was simple and devastating: add a male rapper to every song or lose the deal. The demand wasn't just about music, it was about control. The executives didn't believe that a female-fronted rock band could succeed without a male presence to legitimize them. They pointed to the lack of successful female rock acts in recent years and insisted that Amy's voice alone wasn't enough to carry the band. The message was clear: you're not good enough as you are. Amy and Ben Moody were faced with an impossible choice. They could compromise their artistic vision and add the male vocals, or they could walk away from their only shot at mainstream success. The decision tore at everything they believed about their music, but they ultimately agreed to the label's demands for one song, Bring Me to Life. Paul McCoy from 12 Stones was brought in to provide the male vocals that the executives insisted were necessary. The irony is painful to consider. The song that would become Evanescence's biggest hit, the track that launched Amy Lee to international stardom, was created under duress. Every time fans hear those male vocals in Bring Me to Life, they're hearing the sound of artistic compromise forced by an industry that didn't believe in Amy's talent. She's admitted that she still struggles to listen to the album version because it represents everything she was forced to give up. But the label's interference went beyond just adding male vocals. They also suggested that Amy lose weight and present herself as more sexually appealing to male audiences. These suggestions were presented as business advice, but Amy recognized them for what they really were: attempts to reduce her to a marketable image rather than respecting her as an artist. Her refusal to comply with these demands created tension that would follow her throughout her career. The success of Bring Me to Life should have vindicated Amy's artistic vision, but instead it created new problems. The song's popularity meant that Evanescence was constantly compared to that one track, with critics and fans expecting every subsequent release to feature similar male vocals. Amy found herself trapped by the very compromise that had launched her career, unable to escape the shadow of a creative decision she'd never wanted to make. Amy and Ben Moody were faced with an impossible choice. They could compromise their artistic vision and add the male vocals, or they could walk away from their only shot at mainstream success. The decision tore at everything they believed about their music, but they ultimately agreed to the label's demands for one song, Bring Me to Life. Paul McCoy from 12 Stones was brought in to provide the male vocals that the executives insisted were necessary. The irony is painful to consider. The song that would become Evanescence's biggest hit, the track that launched Amy Lee to international stardom, was created under duress. Every time fans hear those male vocals in Bring Me to Life, they're hearing the sound of artistic compromise forced by an industry that didn't believe in Amy's talent. She's admitted that she still struggles to listen to the album version because it represents everything she was forced to give up. But the label's interference went beyond just adding male vocals. They also suggested that Amy lose weight and present herself as more sexually appealing to male audiences. These suggestions were presented as business advice, but Amy recognized them for what they really were: attempts to reduce her to a marketable image rather than respecting her as an artist. Her refusal to comply with these demands created tension that would follow her throughout her career. The success of Bring Me to Life should have vindicated Amy's artistic vision, but instead it created new problems. The song's popularity meant that Evanescence was constantly compared to that one track, with critics and fans expecting every subsequent release to feature similar male vocals. Amy found herself trapped by the very compromise that had launched her career, unable to escape the shadow of a creative decision she'd never wanted to make. While Amy was fighting battles with her record label, she was also dealing with increasingly toxic behavior from her creative partner and co-founder Ben Moody. What had started as a collaborative relationship between two young musicians gradually became a power struggle that would ultimately destroy their friendship and nearly end the band. Ben's behavior during the early years of Evanescence's success revealed a darker side of his personality that Amy hadn't fully recognized before. As the band's popularity grew, so did his need to control every aspect of their music and image. He began undermining Amy's contributions to their songs, claiming credit for melodies and lyrics that she had written. More troubling was his tendency to belittle her in front of other band members and industry professionals. The situation reached a breaking point during their 2003 European tour. Ben's attitude had become increasingly negative and hostile, creating a toxic environment that affected the entire band. Amy later described him as poisonous, someone who was actively trying to drag everyone down with his misery. The constant tension was making it impossible for the band to function, and Amy knew something had to change. The end came suddenly and dramatically. In the middle of their European tour, Ben announced that he was quitting the band. He didn't give notice or try to work out a transition. He simply decided he was done and expected everyone else to deal with the consequence. Amy was left scrambling to find a replacement guitarist while maintaining their touring schedule and dealing with the media fallout. What made Ben's departure even more painful was the way he handled it afterward. Instead of maintaining professional silence about their split, he made several public statements that seemed designed to hurt Amy and damage the band's reputation. He suggested that Evanescence would be better off without him, implying that Amy wasn't capable of leading the band on her own. These comments revealed a level of spite and vindictiveness that shocked Amy and made her realize how toxic their relationship had become. The legal battles that followed were equally devastating. Ben retained rights to many of the songs they had written together, creating ongoing financial and creative complications for Amy. She found herself having to negotiate with her former friend and creative partner every time she wanted to perform or record their early material. The business relationship that should have ended cleanly became a source of ongoing stress and conflict. Years later, when Ben formed a new band called We Are the Fallen with other former Evanescence members, Amy saw it as a final betrayal. The band's name seemed like a deliberate reference to Evanescence's breakthrough album, and their musical style was clearly designed to capitalize on the success success that Amy had built. It felt like Ben was trying to profit from their shared history while simultaneously undermining her current work. Just as Amy was establishing herself as a serious artist, she encountered the dark side of Hollywood's entertainment industry. Her attempts to branch out into acting brought her face to face with Harvey Weinstein, the powerful producer whose predatory behavior would later become international news. The encounter happened during the early 2000s, when Amy was exploring opportunities beyond music. She was invited to a hotel room to discuss a potential film project, a meeting that seemed like a normal part of the business. What happened next was a textbook example of how powerful men in Hollywood use their positions to exploit vulnerable women. Weinstein's approach was calculated and intimidating. He made it clear that Amy's participation in his projects would depend on her willingness to submit to his advances. When she refused and left the meeting, the retaliation was swift and comprehensive. The film project disappeared, other opportunities dried up, and Amy found herself effectively blacklisted from Hollywood projects. The impact of this encounter went far beyond just losing acting opportunity. It reinforced Amy's growing understanding that the entertainment industry was designed to exploit and control women, particularly those who refused to play by the established rules. The experience left her feeling vulnerable and angry, emotions that would fuel some of her most powerful songwriting in the years that followed. What makes this story even more significant is that Amy was one of the first women to speak publicly about Weinstein's behavior years before the #MeToo movement made such revelations safer. Her willingness to share her experience despite the potential career consequences showed a courage that many of her peers couldn't match. But it also highlighted how isolated women in the industry were when facing such predatory behavior. The Weinstein encounter was part of a broader pattern of sexism that Amy faced throughout her career. Industry executives consistently underestimated her ability, questioned her leadership of the band, and made decisions based on outdated assumptions about what female artists could achieve. These attitudes weren't just personally insulting, they had real financial and creative consequences that limited Amy's opportunities and undermined her artistic vision. Even as Evanescence achieved massive commercial success, Amy discovered that fame didn't necessarily translate to financial security. The complex web of record deals, management contracts, and publishing agreements meant that much of the money generated by their hit songs was flowing to other people. The financial exploitation began with their early record deals, which were structured to heavily favor the label over the artist. Like many young musicians, Amy and Ben had signed contracts without fully understanding the long-term implications. The advance money they received seemed generous at the time, but it was actually a loan that had to be repaid from their future earnings, often with interest and additional fees. The situation became even more complicated when Ben left the band. The rights to their early songs were split between multiple parties, creating a maze of royalty payments and licensing agreements that made it difficult for Amy to understand how much money she was actually earning. She found herself in the frustrating position of hearing her songs on the radio constantly while struggling to pay her bills. Management and legal fees consumed another significant portion of the band's earnings. The music industry's complex structure meant that Amy needed teams of professionals to handle various aspects of her career, but their fees often exceeded what she was actually earning from her music. She was caught in a cycle where success generated more expenses rather than more income. The touring revenue that should have provided financial stability was also compromised by the industry's standard practices. Venues, promoters, and booking agents all took their cuts before the band saw any money, and the costs of mounting a professional tour often exceeded the revenue it generated. Amy found herself working constantly but struggling to build any real wealth from her effort. This financial instability had serious personal consequences. Amy has spoken about periods when she couldn't afford basic necessities despite being internationally famous. The disconnect between her public success and private financial struggles created additional stress and anxiety that affected her mental health and her relationships with family and friends. The financial problems also limited Amy's creative freedom. When you're struggling to pay bills, it becomes much harder to take artistic risks or turn down lucrative opportunities that don't align with your vision. Amy found herself having to make creative decisions based on financial necessity rather than artistic integrity, a compromise that went against everything she believed about her music. Recent years have brought new controversies and conflicts that have kept Amy Lee in the headlines for reasons she probably wishes she could avoid. Her public feuds with former band members and industry figures have revealed ongoing tensions that date back to Evanescence's early days. The departure of bassist Jen Majura in 2022 created a particularly messy situation. While the official reason for Jen's dismissal was never clearly explained, rumors suggested that she had violated the band's trust by sharing confidential information with fan clubs. The situation escalated when Jen gave interviews expressing her hurt and confusion about being fired, creating a public relations nightmare for Amy and the band. Amy's response to the Jen Majura situation revealed a harder, more business-focused side of her personality that some fans found difficult to reconcile with her artistic image. Her comments about listening to the universe and knowing when a chapter ends seemed dismissive of Jen's emotional pain and suggested a level of callousness that surprised many longtime supporters. The situation with former Seether frontman Sean Morgan added another layer of controversy to Amy's personal life. Their relationship and subsequent breakup became public fodder when Amy released Call Me When You're Sober, a song that many interpreted as being about Sean's struggles with addiction. The track's success meant that Sean's personal problems became entertainment for millions of people, creating lasting resentment between them. Amy's public criticism of Gene Simmons for his comments about women in rock also generated significant discussion. While many supported her stance against sexism in the music industry, others felt that her response was overly aggressive and missed the nuances of Simmons' comment. The controversy highlighted the ongoing challenges that female rock artists face in balancing advocacy with diplomacy. These recent conflicts have revealed a pattern in Amy's relationships with collaborators and industry figures. While she's clearly talented and passionate about her music, she also appears to have difficulty maintaining long-term professional relationships. Whether this is due to her high standards, the pressures of the music industry, or personality conflicts is unclear, but the pattern is undeniable. The cumulative effect of these controversies has been to complicate Amy's public image. While she remains respected as an artist, her reputation as a collaborator and leader has been damaged by the ongoing conflicts and public disputes. This has made it more difficult for her to attract and retain talented musicians, potentially limiting Evanescence's future creative possibility. Despite all the betrayals, exploitation, and industry manipulation, Amy Lee's story is ultimately one of survival and artistic triumph. She refused to let the men who tried to control her define her career, and she's managed to maintain her creative vision despite decades of pressure to compromise. The most remarkable aspect of Amy's journey is how she's transformed her pain into art that resonates with millions of people. The abusive relationship that nearly destroyed her became the foundation for songs that have helped countless others escape their own toxic situation. The industry sexism she faced has made her a powerful advocate for other female artists trying to navigate similar challenges. Amy's refusal to take medication for her depression, while potentially dangerous from a health perspective, preserved the emotional intensity that makes her music so compelling. She chose to feel everything fully, to experience the depths of pain and despair, because she understood that this suffering was the source of her artistic power. It's a decision that few people would make, but it's also what separates true artists from mere entertainers. The financial struggles that plagued her early career have also taught Amy valuable lessons about the business side of music. She's become much more involved in the contractual and financial aspects of her work, ensuring that she maintains control over her artistic artistic output and receives fair compensation for her effort. This business acumen has allowed her to build a more sustainable career in her later years. Perhaps most importantly, Amy has learned to trust her own instincts about people and situations. The betrayals she experienced with Ben Moody and others taught her to be more careful about who she allows into her inner circle. While this may have made her seem more guarded or difficult to work with, it's also protected her from further exploitation and manipulation. Amy Lee's story reveals uncomfortable truths about how the music industry treats female artists, particularly those who refuse to conform to traditional expectations. Her experiences with record labels, management companies, and industry executives show a pattern of sexism and exploitation that continues to affect women in music today. The demand for male vocals on Bring Me to Life wasn't just about that one song, it represented a broader belief that female artists need male validation to succeed. This attitude persists in various forms throughout the industry, from radio programmers who are reluctant to play female artists to festival organizers who book predominantly male acts under the assumption that they draw bigger crowds. Amy's financial struggles, despite massive commercial success, highlight the predatory nature of many music industry contracts. Young artists are routinely presented with deals that seem generous, but are actually designed to extract maximum value while providing minimal compensation. The complexity of these agreements makes it nearly impossible for artists to understand what they're signing, creating opportunities for exploitation that can last for decades.